My name is Barbara Newman. CLC Network, CLC stands for Christian Learning Center, allows me to not only have a classroom at Zeeland Christian, but also to be able to work with churches. So I'm a consultant, and I've done some writing, written some books and things too along the way. But hopefully you'll leave today with new ideas to try. That's my biggest and greatest hope from the time together today. So I wanted to begin by just asking a question. If you were going to go and stay in a hotel and money was no object, would you choose a 5-star hotel or a 2-star hotel? Who here would choose that 5-star hotel? Right. 5-star hotels are amazing, right? They know your name before you even walk in the door. Mrs. Newman, how are you? They have different pillows. You can choose the right firmness for yourself. They'll pull the bed sheets down, and if you want to, you could have chocolate or an apple if you're eating more healthy these days, right? They know they want to make it just special just for you. They don't just leave the light on. They choose the lighting that will make you the most pleased, right? So those are the kinds of 5-star amenities. And I was thinking about that. If you had to put a number of stars on your children's ministry at your church, how many stars would you get? How well do you know those individuals, those children, and how well do you put things together based on what they may need? So I was thinking of a model for that, and I right away thought of Jesus. Think of Jesus as a teacher, how he did that. When he would interact so beautifully with a single individual or with a huge group. He would use object lessons. In fact, I love that story of the woman by the well, and she finally looks at him and says, "Sir, I perceive you are a prophet," right? He could read her mind, knew exactly what she needed. And I think sometimes we need to think about that as churches. How can we know each one that's coming? And for many of the individuals that we have, Plan A at church works really well. And maybe pieces of Plan A work well for another individual, but there are things you're going to have to add or change in order to really connect with that person. So I think a lot of it has to do with how many tools we have in our toolboxes. What can we pull out? What do we know about the kids that we're serving? And what can we do to allow them to connect better with the materials, with the stories that we're telling, so that they can have a successful time at church? So these ideas that you're going to see, we're going to go really kind of fast today. And I want to go through just a couple of basics about forming a plan. When your Plan A isn't completely successful and you need something else, it's time to get a new idea. And in general, I think it's really important that you get to know that individual. You ask them questions. What do they love to do? What things are difficult for them? So that you can understand, right, the joys and challenges of this particular young person's life. And so I think asking those kinds of questions and getting to know, well, this works for them at school, this works for them at home, might work for them at church as well. So to get to know that person. And once you know that person, I think the best way to form a plan is to hop into that person's shoes and be that person in church. So if you know you are interacting with somebody who's really struggling to write things down on paper, let's just take that for an example, right? That's so difficult for this person. What can you put around that person that might allow that individual to be more successful? So would anything in church be a problem during the worship time? No, but maybe during youth group or maybe during Sunday school, we'll have to brainstorm some new ideas. So a lot of it is to get to think what might be those problem spots for that individual. From there, you make a plan, and we're going to talk about lots of ideas that might work in your plan. Make sure, churches, that you share the plan with the right people. So often we staff our children and youth ministries with multiple people, right? So we've got maybe 2 or 3 Sunday school teachers, and we've got 2 worship leaders, and we've got 4 youth group leaders that share responsibilities in this group. So once you make a plan, it's really important that the right people know what the plan is. So if we've decided that maybe this child has difficulty reading, we might be able to tell the Sunday school teachers, remember, don't ask that child to read aloud, right? But if we forget to tell the worship leaders and they happen to call on that child, oh, ouch, right? We missed that part of the plan. So we have to make sure that we share it. Put the plan in place, and the reason why I'm putting this in is just a reminder that you've got to go back and review that plan, because chances are your excellent plan that you have devised, part of it will work. And you have to dump what doesn't work and start over. So make sure that when you have that plan, you take time to review it and go back and say, what's working and what do we need to change yet? So let's talk today about Lots of ideas. I think we counted them. They're about 52. So I'll be sweating by the time we're done, and that's okay. Kind of warm in here anyway, but that's all right. A few cautions before we begin. Number one, all ideas are not going to work for all people. So I'm going to give you this great idea. I'm going to try this, and then it doesn't work. That's the way it goes with ideas to try. At least you got 52 to choose from, right? So there we go. And this isn't a menu of choices. Your handout today is like gold, and I'm going to tell you why. That handout that you have is coded. So if you look at that handout, it's a menu. So there are different choices under visual things to try and things for kids with attention concerns. You see that? It's all in categories. But here's the trick. Behind each item that you can purchase somewhere, there's a company's name. That means you can get that item from that company, and if you turn your handout over, the websites for those places are listed on there. A lot of them you can make, but those that you would need to find or order, it tells you where you can order them from. So as we're going through, star those things that you really think are excellent to try, and then we can do that. But it's a menu of choices. Don't say, oh, we're going to start with number one under visual. Okay, well, that might not connect with that person. So don't forget, you have to start with getting to know that person. Here's another way of looking at this. My colleague, Doug Bauman, is a psychologist for the Christian Learning Center, an amazing man. And he put together a way to have us think about some things that our brain does for us. So, for example, our brain helps us pay attention, right? Focus. Our brain helps us with memory, short-term memory, long-term memory, and helping us to retain information. Our brain helps us organize what we see, put Lego puzzles together, those kinds of things. Our brain helps us put words together and understand problems and keeping track of the order of things, time. How many of you wake up before your alarm ever goes off? Isn't it incredible that your brain keeps track of time many times even while we're sleeping? And then there are some individuals for whom that is not a gift. Have you noticed that? My son, for example, he's one of those individuals that you say, honey, take a 10-minute shower. 40 minutes later, he doesn't have that internal clock. So, these can be either strengths or weaknesses for people. The whole muscle and motor skill development and that idea of the brain's ability to how do you keep friendships and how do you make friends. Those are some of the things that our brain does for us. And what I've done now is I've put together some different tips or ideas. And the first section we're going to talk about are things to increase the visuals in your environment. Let me tell you who that's helpful for, okay? Remember that everybody has strengths and needs. So in this chain, you're going to have some areas that might be a weakness. So for some, maybe paying attention is a weaker area for them. But perhaps their visual ability to put things together is a real strength, okay? So individuals for whom increasing the visuals can be very helpful would be people, for example, who have ADHD. If you have a visual in your environment about what's going to happen, let's say you just put the schedule up, and that person is kind of checking in and out and doing different things, they have an anchor to go back to know what it is they need to do. Or perhaps for a child on the autism spectrum, for whom they will say, if I didn't see it, you didn't say it. Very important to have visuals for persons on the autism spectrum. Another set of individuals are people whose memory, for whatever reason, may not always be there to support them. And so if you have a visual in place, they come back to it, oh, that's right, that's what I need to be doing. So the first set of ideas for the plan A, B, C, whatever plan you're up to with this individual, have to do with how can we increase some of the visuals in a church environment. Are you ready? Okay, remember, star the ones you love, put a circle around them, because as we're going through your handout, hopefully you'll find some new things that you can try. First of all, one of my favorite things for the visual environment are these time timers, right? I showed this in the other one. If you've not seen these before, these are an outstanding way of letting people know visually about time. So you can set this for 10 minutes, runs on a battery, and when the red is gone, time is up. Okay, so again, you're not reminding people, oh, it's time to pick up. No, here's our joint attention with this timer. And you can set it for people who have some sensitivities with their ears. You can set it to ding or not ding so that you've got that chance to turn off the dinger in the back. These are an incredible visual tool for your environment. Another thing that can be incredibly helpful is to have some kind of a visual schedule. And again, it can take many forms. I personally love those that have everybody see what's going to be happening. And you can do them in words, you can do them in pictures, but I really appreciate pocket folders because you can keep the extra pieces in the pockets and they're always there for you. So you can run off pictures or even take photos and turn them into little squares with Velcro on the back so that you can peel them off. What I like about schedules, once they're in a form like this, for people that need to see, oh, we're getting to the end, you can take them off and stick them in the pocket when you're done. We're done with that. It also lets you, for people who hate it when you change the schedule, lets you make that change without even using that word. So we could go up to that person and say, hey, could you pull this one off for me, please? Great. I'm going to put this one here. If you could put that here. Can you tell everybody what we're going to do first?
Read the Bible.
Read the Bible. That's great. And then we're going to have a chance to play in the room. And then we get to go to the library because you get to take something home today, right? Okay. She just got a chance to change the schedule around. I didn't have to use the word change. And she had some power over doing that. So if you have icons like this to use, it can be incredibly helpful. And again, you can store those pieces down in the pocket and it keeps you from losing them. So anyway, there's that time timer again. Another thing that I saw that I really loved was this. Shh. Okay, pretty much it's out of the room, isn't it? My shh is gone. I did it. What do you think? 2 seconds? Okay. What a great idea to get one of those traffic lights and a clothespin. And if you put that clothespin on the red, no talking. Clothespin on the yellow means whisper voices. Clothespin on the green means you can talk in an indoor voice. But the clothespin doesn't leave. So as the volume, you can just reference, oh, remember it's on the yellow. But it doesn't go away like my shh just did. It's always there in front of the group. This I could not believe. I was visiting a group, and in that group, the kids were getting a little bit noisy. The leader of the group took a remote control, pointed it at them, and said, I turned you down to a 2. Do you believe it? It was great. And the kids all knew that that was fine. And then they were going to sing. She said, I turned you up to an 8. But it was a wonderful way to think about a range of noise, volume. Some people just kind of have voices that are stuck in about this volume. Have you met individuals like that? Sure. But it's important for people to realize that voices can come in a way that you can modulate them from 0 to 10. So remote controls, I thought that was a great idea. Remember to use digital cameras. I think this is great. A lot of times we'll say to people, clean up the room. Well, we all know, because I have a husband and 2 teenage sons at home, that everyone's impression of clean is a little different, correct? All right. So if you take a picture of what clean is, you can post that picture by the area where you want it to be cleaned. So I tell parents, take a picture of that closet clean, or a picture of how you want the backpack stuff to look. If you're in a church, take a picture of how the toys should look when it's done. You can even take pictures of how you want people to sit during story time, or how you want people to interact with one another. Take photos of that so that kids have an idea. So often I've seen worship leaders too, okay, well, don't shake hands that hard, right? We need to teach kids, what does that hard mean, right? And how can we give them some information about that? So take a picture, let them practice. I think those are really important things. Another really great visual tool that we have is called the Church Welcome Story. We also have one called the School Welcome Story. It lets a child visit that environment before they ever get there. So for individuals who are anxious about the sleepover that's coming up in youth group and they've never been there and they don't know what to expect, or for the individual that's transitioning from this preschool play area to a more structured kindergarten time, or they're just starting children's worship, or whatever it may be, they're heading into a new setting, you can write them a story. Now, this is not a book, so if you pick it up on our table, you're going to say, what is that? These are the instructions. I like to call it an instruction manual for how to put the stories together, and it's important because words mean a lot. So I've chosen to include the school welcome story, and I'll show you how that, oh no, this is the church. Hi, my name is Donovan, and I want to tell you about my Sunday school class. Here is a picture of my church. It's called First Baptist Church. Sometimes I stay with my family when I'm at church, and sometimes I go to a room for children in Sunday school. Here's a picture of the room where I can be with my friends. So Donovan's never been to Sunday school, but he has a chance to see it all. The story goes on to say who his leaders are going to be, what he can call them, how they do story time, how they do this, when does mom come to pick me up, or whatever it may be. So it lets them preview the whole place before they ever get there. And it is a great visual tool with the pictures. I had a mom come up, or a church children's ministry leader come up to me and say, we don't know what to do. We really want this 6th grader with Asperger's syndrome to come on our youth group overnight, but he's so anxious. And I said, do you have pictures from last year? And sure enough, so we put together story for that child about that event. So those are some of the ways that you can use that Christmas program time. There are some kids that hate Christmas program time because you change the entire schedule. So if you write a story about what that could be very helpful. So that's just another tool. All right, those are some visual ideas. Hopefully that will be a helpful place to begin. I want to also talk now about kids that struggle with attention issues. And I want to take just a minute to think about that thing called ADHD, right? So common diagnosis, right? It happens so often. I think churches have a unique situation going on, and let me tell you why. First of all, it's a very brain-based chemical issue, all right? So to tell a child to sit down and sit there for 25 minutes is kind of like saying to that diabetic, you know what, if I'm strict enough with you, I believe you can produce more insulin, okay? It's a biological thing, and you need to remember that. Would that work with a person with diabetes? No, because it's a bodily process. Well, that same thing is true for individuals with ADHD. It doesn't mean that we're going to let things just kind of seep out the cracks and they can do whatever they want to. No, but we do need to be understanding because you're fighting some brain chemistry, especially in church. And let me tell you why. How many of you run an evening program as part of your children's ministry? Okay, and how many of you work on the weekends? All right. Some children, not all, and I'm not here to comment on this, many children take some kind of medication. Most of the medications last for a certain amount of time, 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, or 12 hours, depending on the kind of medication you take. So that child gets that medication in their mouth at 7 o'clock in the morning. What time is that pill going to run out if it lasts for 12 hours? You got that right, 7 o'clock p.m., and you can just watch it happen. Let me tell you, I've run enough evening programs in a church to know that that's exactly what happens. And there are some side effects from that. Sometimes kids don't sleep as well, they don't eat as well. Some parents choose not to give medication on the weekends. Okay, so this is typically a support that the child has going for them, and it can be a huge support, but they can't just give them another pill because kids on meds typically are not going to sleep very well at night. So if they pop a second pill, they'll be up all night, all right? And they won't eat. So what happens is this medication is running out of their body, and one of the most difficult times is the time when the medication is running out and your brain needs to catch the signal to start producing some more of your own dopamine, all right? And so there it is, it's catching that signal, but you are in the middle of evening Awana, youth group, boys club, girls club, something that's going on at night. And that medication's coming out and your body is not prepared for this. And then you're hungry because you haven't eaten all day. So you wipe out the snack table. You become very animated, maybe kind of loud because you are just trying to find that place of control for yourself again. So again, churches can have some unique issues going on with attention. I think it's important for leaders to understand that. That may be a kiddo that comes in a little more on the calm side and is leaving at a very different place. Don't you think it would help them to understand what medication issues might be going on, right? And not everybody is on medication. So I want to give you some ideas to try, all right? And again, we want this to be a place of success. We want kids to continue to learn. So let's try some things. First of all, I think seating is one of those things that you can change. Bean bags, exercise balls, you can sit on T-stools, rocking chairs, things that move. Sometimes just putting some movement in the chair can be helpful. And also, look what a difference. You're sitting in chairs with one boundary called the back. It can really help kids by adding 2 more called arms to the chair. All of a sudden, you've got a little more structure around your body, and for some individuals, that can make a big difference. So think about seating. I think that can be helpful. And I think choices can be important. Do you want to do this in the chair or on the floor over there? I'm not asking if they want to complete the activity. I'm asking how they want to get the activity done. All right? And I think that that's a really great opportunity to give power to somebody who sometimes feels like they are out of control. So again, choices are an excellent opportunity. Would you like to do this with a partner or on your own? Would you like to do the first part first or the last part first? Whatever whatever choices you can allow that individual to make can be helpful. They actually make wiggle cushions, and again, this will be on your menu that you can order. This is actually a wiggle seat. If it works well, the child will say to you what this child said to me, "Wow, it moves for me so I don't have to." All right, and you literally are sitting on a cushion of air. Pretty fun tool to have. For the child that's not working well for, it turns into a Frisbee, at which point you should take it away, by the way, okay? So again, I always say these are tools that can help us learn. So the Frisbee, that child doesn't need that particular support. It's not working for him. This is one of my favorites, and these are called fidget pencils. And this allows a person to kind of have their fingers busy so their mind is ready to learn. If you've got pencil chewers, sometimes this helps take that off. I like these because they're reusable. Once the pencil's sharpened, you can pop it off and put it on the next pencil. So once you make the investment, this fidget is reusable. So those are really nice. But to be honest, I keep one in my purse. So there we go. Fidgets are great. Sometimes you can have other fidgets, and it depends on the age of the kids. Just something to keep the hands busy so your mind is freed to learn. Again, I often say to people, don't just get one fidget pencil, get a few so the same person doesn't always feel singled out. You can get 3 fidget pencils and say, hey, I learned about this and it helps some kids learn better. So if this helps you, you may use it. I think another thing, and I don't want to bring up bad memories for anybody. Anybody know what this stuff is? Anybody have shoulder surgery or something like that? This is called TheraBand, and a lot of times they use it or in exercise class, right? Okay, same idea. What you can do with this is actually wrap it around the front 2 legs of the chair really tight, and it lets who's ever sitting in that chair put their feet right back behind that TheraBand and push. And so they actually can do some resistance work sitting right in that chair. And it's really great. Again, for the child for whom this works, they will say, wow, I can take a walk without leaving my chair. As I said, those other kids, it turns into a slingshot and then you remove it. So again, you've got to really be tuned into, is this helping people learn or not? So again, TheraBand can be helpful. Okay, I want to take just a quick minute. I hope you've gotten a new idea to try so far. That's my hope, right? Something that you can take back and try. So what I'd like you to do is to just take a minute or so to talk to the person or the people next to you. And if you're kind of by yourself, find a friend, right? That old millionaire show, phone a friend, but find somebody to partner with. What aha do you think you can go back and try? We're just going to take 2 minutes. So find somebody and compare notes a minute. What do you think might work? All right, who here has found at least one new idea? They're ready to go. Oh my goodness, we still have some hands that are not up, so we have to work double hard here in the next section. So, one other comment I want to make before we dive in. If you have some kids that are struggling for whatever reason it may be, remember to plant something pleasing to that child somewhere in their time at church. In the other one I said, I've called it green time, but find that child's strength. Find what they are good at. Find something that is special to that child. Make sure they get to do it when they come to church. Many kids really struggle through a school day. And if church is going to be exactly like school, they're not going to want to come. You know, a lot of the kids we're talking about today, they gut it out to save face for the 9 hours that they're at school or 7 hours that they're at school, and then they have homework to do. So please, you know, church shouldn't be academic. It's a place to learn, it's a place to grow, it's a place to have friends and community, but make sure you plant in there the things that are easy. So if you've got a kiddo with some attention concerns, what's easy for that child? Are they really good at drawing? Could they have a corner of the room where their artwork is displayed? Maybe you have a frame with a piece of Velcro in it, and each week they Velcro up one of their new creations, something that will allow them to be part of that environment and to be take joy in that place. So think about that as we talk about those things that are struggles. Make sure you take time to find what's easy and pleasing and delightful in that child and plant that in there. Okay, then I want to talk about writing for a minute and fine motor stuff, right? For some reason, kids get a scissors, some can cut and some can't. Some kids get a pencil and some can put something on the paper and some just can't. And then here I have to remind you, again, you're the one that's going to get to know which ones of these are going to work because you're the one that's going to get to know the individual. So let's say that you have a child who's really struggling to get a sentence down on the paper, but you see the issue for that child that's a problem is not their hand strength. They have excellent hand strength because they're playing those games, whatever. They can do that no problem. But what's really hard for that child is remembering things. Well, handing that child a special pencil, is that going to help at all? No, because that's not the problem. Now, a bank of words of important things that you talked about, now that might help because they won't have to remember all the words, right? So if you put a bank of words down. So all I'm saying is that you are still the one that's going to have to be the investigator to know which ones of these are going to be the most helpful. Does that make sense? Okay, so here we go. Some ideas to try. Churches just crack me up. I will go in, they say, would you help us figure out the problem? And I literally went into one the other day, said, well, you know, we just can't get this one here, he just can't write anything. So he's the shortest one in the class. Literally, his eyes were here on the table, and the table was up here. Could you write that way? No. And a lot of times in churches, we're using spaces that really aren't groomed for kids, right? So look at that. If you're expecting a lot of whatever, bodies like 90-degree angles. Okay, we like them right here, we like them here, your feet have to be flat on the floor. So look at the seating. If you've got kids sitting like that or people sitting like that, that's a great 90-degree angle seat. And that's really what bodies like in order to be able to have the strength to write, cut, color, those kinds of things. So think about that. If you are just stuck with your room and the chairs that you have, you can get creative. For example, get some phone books and duct tape and make some stools, right? So that you can tape them together based on the kids and get that 90-degree angle for each one so that they've got a footstool for their feet. Speaking of phone books, one of my favorite doodads is if you get somebody with one of those circular saws, you can have them just buzz that right through. And if you have somebody who really struggles to hold cards, these make some of the nicest and inexpensive card holders that you will ever find. And not only do they work for cards, they can work for story pictures or whatever you want. Sometimes this angle for a person in front of them, looking straight at them, is a much better angle than laying something down flat. So this is a great way to get it. You can get somebody just to zip off those phone books. So that's kind of a fun thing to try. Okay, a few other thoughts. Oh, yeah, there they are. Ta-da. Our pencil grips. And a lot of these, it's helpful to find out from parents what's been working at school. If a child has a pencil grip at school, well, it might work. So I brought a few along, and these are, you know, pencil grips that you can put on different pencils. I like this for little ones because of the webbing on the top. It kind of traps their fingers. But grips come in all shapes and sizes. But so do pencils, actually. You can find pencils that are a variety of sizes. Some are made in the shape of a triangle, which really helps fingers kind of fall around it more naturally. This is actually a weighted pencil. So we've had some kids with that slight tremor in that hand, and just by putting that weight on it, it really helps to calm that tremor down. So these are some of the tools that schools use for kids that struggle with writing. And the reason why I take them all along, even on an airplane, is so that you can come and try some things pretty soon and pick some things up to see if you think it might be helpful for the people that brought you to this place today. Now this, I really only show to teachers if I'm doing an education conference, but I brought one along to show you. If you ever have kids, and really you're not there to correct pencil grips at church, but it's kind of cool, and if you ever have your own kid that just can't hold that pencil correctly, here you go, it's the coolest thing. They actually sell these pre-made on the internet for $13 a piece, and you can make them out of hair ribbon. So this is the way you do it. You put your hand right through the middle one. You get rid of the two non-writing fingers by trapping the bead against the palm of your hand. So you only have 3 fingers left. You pick up whatever pencil you're writing with, and then, ta-da, you put that on the back. Isn't that cool? And so every time you write incorrectly, your brain memorizes it incorrectly. This lets kids feel what the right pencil grip is actually supposed to feel like, sometimes for the first time. So you don't even have to use these very long. Once they get it and the feel of it, it's pretty cool. So hair ribbons and beads, folks, it's really kind of fun. Yeah. Now, let's talk about paper options. There are a variety of things that can be helpful, and I took along some of those ideas. Actually, they make paper with raised lines so that when kids are writing, they can bump into the lines. And these you can get like at Walmart kind of stores if you look in their school supplies. Sometimes just highlighting the boundaries can be helpful. Do you see the difference? Just by making it a little bit darker, or by making it a little darker and running it off on a different color. Isn't that incredible? Those boundaries just show up so much better. So some kids are more successful. You might have some individuals who really struggle with a coloring project, and sometimes just highlighting the one object you want them to color can be very helpful for them. The other thing that's great that you can get from office supply stores is the NCR paper. It doesn't have carbon in it, but you write on the top copy and it goes through to the other 2 copies. So if you're in a situation where you have Penny, who's this excellent writer, you can give her this, and Carol, who really struggles with writing, she wants to take the information home because it's really important. Penny can keep the top copy, and bingo, the next copy can go to Carol. So anyway, it's a way to get information out, multiple copies, and it's kind of a neat tool to be able to use. So those are some of the options that are available for paper. Another couple of things, so many of our pre-made things don't have lines for kids anymore. And what you can do with this is make a piece of paper with lines as big or small as you'd like them to be, and you put a little holder on the bottom so you can take that Sunday school paper or whatever it is you want them to do, slide it in the paper holder, and you can see the lines that come through underneath. So it's a way of adding some structure to something where there wasn't any before. So that can be a helpful tool as well. These are really neat. Sometimes angles make a big difference for kids. Lifting it up, putting it on a slant can be helpful. So they sell slant boards for kids that are like $45, $50, but you can make them out of 3-ring binders. So you get the giant 3-ring binders, and you simply face it so that the large side is away from the child. Put some Velcro on the opening so it doesn't keep opening and closing on the kiddo. But you've just created a really nice slant board. And what some people have done is taken a Pringles can and they hot glue it to the end of the binder, and they put pencils and erasers and things in there that kids will need. So you've made a portable desk. And that can be a really fun option to let kids work on the floor or other places than just at a table. Or you can put it on the table as well. This is an important little gizmo, especially if you've got some kids for whatever physical reasons, they don't have that anchor hand to hold the paper in place. And so this is called Dicem, and it works for bowls, it works for anything. Whatever you put on here is not going to go anywhere. It sticks it tight. So I can take that 3-ring binder and I can stick it on here. It's not moving off the desk. So the kiddo can write on it, but this anchors it. It anchors bowls for kids that are trying to eat and they don't want the bowl to move. It's washable, so it doesn't matter if it gets wet. My greatest use for this, I discovered, was in a time when I had plastic chairs in my room, and I had this little kiddo with cerebral palsy, and he just kept, leaning until he was pretty much under the table. So this works for buns too. I just put it on the chair, and he didn't go anywhere. It was really kind of a neat thing to try. So Dicem is a cool tool. These are fun. If you're in a situation where you're asking people to do a lot of copying from a board or whatever, some people just cannot make that translation from that board to this paper. This is called a page up, and they sell these lots of different places. But what it lets you do is it lets you take whatever paper you want the person to copy and simply slide it right in. And then the person can just copy from the paper beside them on the desk as opposed to copying from a distance. So you just put what you want them to copy on this paper and they can put it on the desk for whatever reason. Again, same thing with that card holder. Angles mean a lot, slant boards. You raise it up. Sometimes people can see it or copy from it a lot better. All righty. A couple of other ideas in this writing area. Remember, we're not a school, we're a church. So one of my favorite things to do, and I'll pick on these guys sitting in the middle, Dave and Daryl. Dave and Daryl. And Dave, I'll tell you, he just has penmanship. He is so great. Daryl really struggles. So anyway, but I want these guys to both be engaged. So I'm going to say, hey, Dave and Daryl, I'd like you to work on this together. I want both of your names to go on it. Right there, who owns those papers? They both do. Make sure you have them both put their names on it or somebody else put the other. So it's both of your papers. Dave, today I'd like you to do the writing, but nothing's to be written down until you've both discussed it first. Okay, does Daryl have a lot of responsibility for that project? But he's got no writing to do. It's a great way to do that. Make a copy, they each get a copy to take home. So again, that's a quick thing to do where you can just use a buddy. And again, we're not teaching people to write. We're using writing almost always to teach something else, aren't we? So maybe a secretary, have somebody float around and copy down people's words. You can do it that way. You can downsize. Maury, I'd like you to work on number 1, okay? And I'd like everybody else to concentrate on 2 through 5. Okay, did I get you off the hook? No, but you're only doing 1, okay? But you're my expert on number 1. Remember that if there are fine motor issues, you might have to adapt several things. So I brought along 3 different kinds of scissors. These are scissors that you don't have to struggle to get your little fingers in, and they bounce back all by themselves. They're spring-loaded scissors, so all you got to do is close them, and they come back all by themselves. These 2 are spring-loaded, and you can get these like at Meijer's. These are more specialized. Sometimes smaller is better. You can have more control with this manicure scissors or breaking crayons in half or using tiny stubs of pencils. Sometimes kids will have better control with that than they will with this long kind of out of control thing. So just think that through as you're looking for different things to try. Okay, I want to go on to the next section, which is more of those kids that are struggling with reading, okay? Reading and language. How many of you working right now with kids who really struggle with the reading area? What are you going to do? How many of you have some individuals who don't have many words that are nonverbal? If you are in that boat too. Our churches are including such a wide variety of kiddos today. So here's a bunch of ideas to try. Again, it depends a little bit on what part of the brain may be having some challenges, but color is one of those vastly underused things, all right? I love these bookmarks, and I'm just going to hold this up on this particular piece of paper. Can you see what a big difference that makes just by making it blue or yellow? It completely changes the contrast of what's on there. So sometimes just changing the color can be very, very helpful for people. I love having these tools available for kids that might choose to use them. Another thing that can add some color is this stuff called highlighter tape. Amazing stuff. You can put it in a book, a Bible. Like when you say, I'm going to have this child read Ephesians 2 verse 10, and you know by the time you get to verse 10, they will be nowhere close to verse 10. You can take this tape, put it over verse 10 in their Bible. They can read it when it's their turn, and it peels right out without hurting the print. So highlighter tape is excellent. Keywords, Bible text, this can be hugely helpful for when you want a portion read or highlighted in a text. So yeah, there's you can get it in all kinds of colors. Sometimes just sliding a piece of paper in one of these good old pocket folders can make a big difference. You know, then you're changing the whole contrast. If you ask a struggling reader, black on white is one of the most difficult color combinations for that individual. So by changing the background color, many times you make it more readable for that individual. So there's lots of ways to do that. You can even just, take it to a copy machine and copy it off on a different color. Sometimes a person really does want to turn to read. They don't always want to have their turn skipped, and that you just have to know by getting to know the individual. But sometimes if you can think of what they might get to read the next time, you can have them prepare and practice ahead of time. You know, I'd really like them to read this part in our Reader's Theater. I'd really like them to read this part in our Advent reading when our classes has to light the candle for whatever. So again, give them a part, but let them know exactly and let them practice it ahead of time, and that can be a very helpful thing. Some individuals struggle because they can't turn the pages on anything for physical reasons or whatever, and it's kind of fun to let kids do their own pages. So this, and these have been in here too long, they don't turn bad colors if you take them right out. If you just want to do it quickly, you can put a sponge with a paper clip on the edges of the book so a person can turn the page a little bit easier. It turns it more into a board book than it does a paper corner book. The other thing, if it's going to be a book that that person will use for a long time, you just take a hot glue gun and just put a dab of hot glue in the corner, and that will just raise it up enough those pages can be turned by an individual who physically may struggle to turn those pages. Don't forget about interviews and recording devices. Churches so often are asking individuals when they join the church to stand up, say something, you know, whatever that may be. For some individuals, that's just not going to happen because of that. Saw the most amazing, this church called it profession of faith. Every church does it a different way, but this was an individual who really struggled with speaking. What they did was they took a camera, a video of her, asked her questions in her house, and she could show different things, her Bible that she loves so much, and she could show and tell minimally by being interviewed, and they showed that in church instead of making her go up. I thought that was a wonderful plan. Had another person who really struggled once they got to Awana, they might be able to say those verses at home ahead of time. It was not going to happen during Awana. And so what they did was they sent a little tape recorder home, and the child with a parent just recorded their verse at home and hit play when they got to Awana. All of a sudden, that was a fun place to go, not a torturous event for this kiddo. So don't forget about those ideas. Yeah, and then resizing. Sometimes if you make the print bigger, it's more readable by some. Change the color at the copy machine. But remember, churches are not there to teach kids to read, all right? We often are using reading to teach something else. So could you use a buddy? Could they read something together where you've got a primary reader and another person really paying attention to the details that are being read? Again, you can have some individuals that struggle with speaking. So I took along a few tools that we sometimes use. Once you have a bank of pictures built up, it allows you to use these devices much more easily. These are just pre-manufactured speech buttons, and many kids have these as options. So you could just take an extra set of materials, of Sunday school material, cut one up, and let's say you told the story of Moses and Miriam. So you've got Moses and Miriam and the princess on different speech buttons, and you can go to a person and say, which one was your favorite? And push the button. Moses, great. Anybody else like Moses as their favorite person in today's story? Okay, so again, she just made a valuable contribution to the discussion, but she didn't have to say a word. So something like this can be very helpful. There are also some other tools that I'll show you in a minute. And again, for kids that don't have many words, once you have a bank of pictures and once you fall in love with Velcro, as I have, you can do just about anything. So this is actually the fabric that's on the top inside of your car. It's called Tempo Loop fabric. You've got a website for that as well. Velcro, oh, I can see other things too, stick to this quite well. And so you can literally take your pictures, or you can ask somebody what do they want to do. You can put Velcro on paintbrushes, and what would you like to do next? Maybe you've got a paintbrush and a color crayon, and they can pull off what they want to do. They've made a choice. Maybe you could put pictures of songs. What song do you want to sing today? They can make a song choice where they couldn't make one before, but it's a way that you can get people engaged. If you don't like wearing an apron, you can just put that lovely fabric on a stick, and you can, you know, walk around. Again, once you've got the picture library, you can put schedules on here. You put schedules on your apron. I just love having pictures available because they give that other option of point, pick, choose. And so for kids who don't have words or don't want to say words in front of others, it's a great way for them to make a contribution without having to have the words come out of their mouth. Now, a quick, very quick sensory thought, and then we're coming to a close. The sensory system, and I mentioned this briefly before, but I'm going to say it again. Each one of our senses is wired at different frequencies. Most of us are kind of wired at what I call middle C, and middle C is an excellent place to be. You block out things that are unimportant, like your bun sitting on the chair. You've probably forgot about that until I mentioned it, right? Most of us habituate to different feelings. You don't feel yourself sitting. If I talked for 2 more hours, you'd be in trouble, right? Because that's too long. But pretty much you can block things out that aren't bothering you, hums of things, sight, sounds, touch issues. And sometimes there are people who are wired on either side of middle C. So just a little bit of sensory input is enough. A sound, just a little sound, because if it's too loud, it could be painful. And I don't know when that loud sound might come, and I have to cover my ears because it could hurt. On the other side, and I did this at the other one, right? You've got those individuals who are kind of oblivious to sound. They aren't monitoring their own voice volume very well because that takes a ton of sound. They're way below middle C. They need a ton of input. Now, that could be true in any sensory system, right? You've got some individuals who, let's just take smells. You know, somebody walks in the door, did you have coffee? I don't like coffee, you know, or they're very, very sensitive to odors, and just a little bit and it penetrates and it really can be obnoxious. Then you've got the other person who like has a lunch bag or backpack with them and you're sure there's been a banana in it for about 2 months, right? And they seem oblivious to the smell. They are not smelling it. It takes a ton of smell to register. Well, that can be in any one of our sensory systems. And let me tell you, church is filled with sensory issues. Many kids, because sensory issue is a neurological issue, so many kids with neurological or brain differences also have a sensory difference. One of my children happens to have ADHD. Okay, that's a neurological difference. It's a brain difference. He also has a tactile issue, right? In all of his clothing, there's a hole about right here where he has ripped out every single tag, because if that tag was in his clothes, he would feel it all day long. He's overly sensitive to touch. He will not put his shoes on unless his toe sock line is lined up exactly right, or he would feel that sock line all day long. So a little bit of touch, right? And so for him, right, the threat is different sensations, people touching him, and that is like, ooh, right? So you have to be careful with that. That's not, and individuals with autism almost always have a sensory difference, either overly sensitive or underly sensitive, and it can be in any sensation. So I'll tell you some things that, and that's a whole hour-long talk, but some things that can be helpful to desensitize, sometimes just plain having a bottle of lotion around. And again, you'd want to find out what works with, you know, people in other settings, and you can't do this with teenagers, by the way. But let's just say Penny's really struggling during story time. Can I have your arm a minute, Penny? All right. And so what you're going to do is just, you know, you can tell the Bible story or have your helper do that for a little bit. Many times it lets people sort of calm down. It lets them de-escalate so that they're not going to have a major fit during my class, and I'd rather rub lotion on their arms than have to go through a major fit. The palm of your hand is probably one of the most sensitive places, and many times people will receive a great dose of calm if you give a nice hand massage. How do you feel, Penny?
Very good, thank you.
Yes. I did this in one group and somebody said, do you do feet? I'm like, well, I could think about that. But so just having that sensation filled for that child was very helpful. I actually did pack in my suitcase a weighted animal. They use weight a lot. So, you know, to put this around a kiddo's shoulders while they're listening to a story. Again, find out what they use at school or at home. If they have a weighted vest or a weighted animal. Just remember one thing, if you're using weight, any kind of weighted product, and they have a lot of them, vests, those pencils, by the way, are a weighted product, any of those kinds of weight systems, you can't wear them for forever. Okay, we don't put on 3 pounds and wake up in the morning and say, boy, I feel 3 pounds heavier today. We habituate to our weight. So if I left that on you for more than 20 minutes, your body would adjust. I need to remove it for 10 minutes, and then I could put it back on because she'll feel it again. So remember that if you have an individual who's using weighted items. That feels kind of good, doesn't it? Yeah, there we go. So, and another thing for sound, and that's a biggie in children's ministry and youth ministry, it's just bombardment with sound. Sometimes to block that, to get some actual sound blockers or earplugs, sometimes you can get a kiddo out of there for a little while. One of my best things is to get a milk crate, fill it with books, and then you can ask somebody to be your helper. Would you carry that down to the library office area, Pastor so-ever's office, and just have them carry that heavy box of books, weighted pressure down there, and then thank you so much, and then 5 minutes later, oh, could you go pick up that box of books, you know, whatever you need to do. But number one, it lets a kiddo get out of there. Kind of kid needs a walk in the hall with a purpose, but it's going to weight their muscles and joints, which can be very helpful. Sometimes you just need to let somebody get out of there. So we recommend just making these little break tickets where somebody can take the break ticket. And break means you're not in trouble. Break could mean you get a drink. Break could mean you can enjoy a book in the back of the room. Break could mean whatever. But kids with sensory issues, so often if you push them too far, they will blow and lose it and not want to come back, who knows what, or they could lose it really loud anyway because it's like their cup is so full it just comes bursting out. I would much rather give kids lotion rub downs, weighted pencils, and breaks before they get to that place. So if you do have somebody who struggles with that, make sure you see if you can't put some supports around that person so that they don't get to that place. Sometimes you can create just a tent in your room, throw a tablecloth over a table. Sometimes even kids can handle noisy environments if they can do it from within a refrigerator box, a study carrel, a camping tent. They can have a respite spot. Even if it's still in the noisy room for whatever, you've blocked out all the other sensations, they can deal with the noise factor better. So that can be helpful. And another thing that I will point out with the sensory piece is that I think it's important to be able to recognize that some kids just need modulation of the environment. They're not going to change how their brain receives sound by pushing kids through things that are not realistic for them. You almost always have to put accommodations around, and they will grow and they will learn. Younger kids have it more intensely. My son, who's much older now, still has those tactile issues. He still rips the tags out of his clothing, right? He still will do that. But the other thing is, he knows he needs a shower every once in a while just to relax his system. He knows how to bring himself to that place of calm. So people do work through that to find ways that are calming for them, to think of proper ways to get out of a place, like using the bathroom, whatever, to get out before it gets upsetting. But younger ones haven't built up that repertoire of how can I deal with this? I'm getting so upset. So we need to help them through that, okay? A couple of other comments, and this has to do with a comment I made this morning, and forgive me for telling this story again, but I love this story so much. So often we are including kids that might need different pencils, that might need adaptations, that might need understanding, that is going to scream if there's a noise that comes up. And so often I think we come up with these great plans, but we forget to include the other part of the plan, which is equipping the other children, right? Equipping the peers. Why does Johnny get a pencil? Well, you know what? If it helps us learn, I'll get a pencil for you too. What do you need? I wear glasses, you don't. I'm not going to make everybody wear my glasses because you don't need them. We all need different things. We're all created by God differently. What an important teaching we can do to allow people to understand that. So I just want to let you know that it's important to equip the others. So here's my great example. Went to a church, and in the middle of the church service, the pastor was preaching away. All of a sudden, from the back of the room, you heard, "Stop! No, don't!" And everybody gasped and turned around, right? Because that's what you do if a sermon is interrupted. Well, without missing a beat, smile on his face, the pastor says, "Oh, this gives me a chance to introduce you to one of the new families in our church. They've given me permission to tell you," that's very important because you can't just hand out information about people. "They've given me permission to tell you that their daughter Marie loves the music in our church and she's really enjoyed being here. Sometimes noises can bother her ears, or the tags in her clothes can bother her, and she happens to have autism. I'm so glad that they're here as part of our church family. Her parents know what to do, and today I'm going to count her as my cheering section." And he went right on. Okay? Took about 15 seconds. 5 minutes later, "Stop, no, don't," same thing. Do you think one person turned around? No, because they had the information that they needed in order to interpret what they heard and saw that day, okay? And I think we will be miles ahead instead of kids getting fearful, uncomfortable, pulling away, isolating, not wanting, if we just give them the information. Now, there's ways to do that using words. Sometimes we can talk about things like Down syndrome. The first book I wrote was helping kids include kids with disabilities. Lesson plans. How do you teach peers about Down syndrome, autism, hearing impairments, visual impairments? How do you do that? Sometimes we just have to celebrate other people's stories. I wrote a devotion book called Bodybuilding, devotions to celebrate inclusive community. How can we read these? It's family devotion style, so you can read them as part of children's settings and think about the stories and the gifts that persons with disabilities bring. That puzzle piece kit is one of my favorites for a little bit older groups, middle school, high school. I use the Helping Kids for 5 and below, inclusion awareness for those older kiddos. And it's a way of communicating that we all have strengths, we all have needs, but we fit together like a puzzle in the body of Christ. Your Feet, My Shoes, a wonderful tool for having kids go through some rotation stations from a Christian perspective. Great for a church activity, about a 40-minute thing. Neat summer activity to do where they can experience some differences that kids may have. Again, make sure your teachers feel comfortable. Do they have what they need? So here are some of the books that either I've written or we carry. One of the tools I want to highlight is something we also have at our table. It's called an Inclusion Toolkit. And what we've done is taken some of my favorite things like highlighter tape and wrist writers and fidget pencils and things like that and put it in a bag so that you take one back and try it. And inside, if you really like it, then you can order more. I hate buying a dozen of something and it doesn't work. So this kind of is an at-cost sort of way to try some of the tools. If you like them, you can order more for your community. So make sure you stop by our table. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. Did you get some ideas you can try? Okay, excellent. Very, very good. Hey, how about before we go, close in a quick prayer, and then you can be off to another sectional? Ooh, right? Long day, but here we go. Lord, we thank you so much for this chance to be together, to think about some of the kiddos in our congregation that might be woven together, knit together by you just a little bit differently than what we sometimes expect or work with. And so we just pray that from this whole basket full of ideas, Lord, that you will highlight the one or two things that might be the very best place for us to begin. Each one is going back to a different place, a different church, a different setting. And I just pray that you'll highlight to that individual which step is the most important next step to take. So I ask for your blessing on these important people, Lord. They make such a difference in the lives of kids, and we just thank you that you treat each one of us as individuals, and we want to do that, Lord, that same thing when we go back to our churches. We praise you for this conference, for this time together. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, thanks. Have a great day.